Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. So I'm finally back again after a break. I feel like I've not gotten into the regularity of filming videos, especially because I need to film them during the weekend, and if I don't get around to doing that, then it kind of crumbles. So I'm going to try to get into the habit of doing that regularly again, because I really enjoy having this conversation with you. And today I want to do the updated state of my TBR video that I mentioned a few videos ago. I wanted to kind of share with you what my TBR looks like at the moment, to also kind of document it for myself and see where I'm at around the start of this year. Albeit the 2 months have already passed, so my TBR does not look exactly the same way it did in the beginning of the year. I bought quite a lot of books in February because the annual book sale in Sweden is in February, and I kind of went all out with that this year. The selection was fantastic, and I went to both my physical bookstores as well as ordered several books from my online local online stores. So I ended up buying a lot of books in February, and because of that I decided to have a no-buy month in March. So we're more than halfway through the month. I have not bought any books, and I'm feeling very good about that. I also have the same rule for no buy in terms of yarn, because I have realized as I've been kind of organizing my yarns that I have I have a big stash, and I never thought that I was one of those people who accumulated a stash. I always looked at destashing videos and content as something that concerned other people. It was never how I had been dealing with yarn buying, because I always bought yarn specifically for a project, but it's becoming an issue now that I've been buying a lot of yarns for future projects way before I end up actually committing to the project and starting it. And the time between the buying and the making has expanded over time. So that is not relevant to this video, but that is the state at the moment. At this month I am not buying any books, and I thought that would be the perfect time to do this video, to have a bit of a pause, and this is the situation we're at. So I have cataloged all of my unread books on Storygraph. So my entire to read list on Storygraph is my physical TBR. With a few exceptions, I have not added all my reference books because they are not the books I read cover to cover in that way, and therefore they are kind of a separate category. And there's also one exception in that when I have added a book to my currently reading on Storygraph, obviously it's no longer in the to read section, and therefore it's not counted, even though it's actually not it's still a kind of a physical TBR, but it's not entirely so because I'm currently reading it. So the number of to be read books that I have on Storygraph, and that is a symbol of my physical TBR behind me, is 491 at the moment, and as I said, a few more probably because I have a few ongoing as well. And I remember a few years ago when I had a TBR goal that I had gotten somewhere around 300. So the TBR has grown with about 200 books since then. And I mean, I don't necessarily have an issue with a physical TBR in itself. It's just that I feel like I'm kind of reaching a max in terms of how many books I can fit in my collection, and I would actually want to make the collection slightly smaller to be able to fit other things related to crafting in my bookshelves. Ideally I would like to dedicate several shelves for crafting supplies and knitting related books or patterns, that kind of thing. And so I would like to remove some of the book storage space for crafting. And so the storage space situation is the reason that I am kind of wanting to focus in on my TBR. But also just I would like to have more of the books that I own and that I keep to be books that I've read and enjoyed and gotten something out of. So that is kind of a general situation. I have looked at the genre split and sort of average themes, and I guess you could say it's pretty expected, the situation. It's almost 50-50 fiction and nonfiction, with a slight I think the nonfiction is slightly more than the fiction, but the difference is not very large. And the subgenres or the genres of fiction and nonfiction is also pretty expected. It's mostly literary fiction. A lot of it is translated fiction. In terms of the nonfiction, a lot of it is memoir. Some of it is biography. It's a big genre as well. A theme that is growing bigger in my collection is queer books, which both fiction and nonfiction. And I've sort of used these things as ways to organize my books. So that is one of the things I really want to talk about in this video. In the beginning of the year, I went through all of my bookshelves and cataloged all of my books on Storygraph, went through them and unhauled a lot of books, and also organized them by a new system. So it's kind of genres, kind of themes. That is the organizing rule for my physical TBR and for my read books. So I've actually mixed them, but I've tried to keep them separate within their categories or within their themes. So I will share some footage of the actual shelves with you now, briefly talk about the system that I have for organizing my books, and share some overviews with you, all of the books that I own. And if you are at all interested in buddy reading with me, I would love to do that. I really enjoy buddy reads. And if you see anything on these shelves that you're interested in reading with me, do let me know and we'll look into that. So starting with my white bookshelf, which is it's the only one that is white, I have organized the first shelf here is just my kind of women's history related ones. So it's all women writers who I've read and enjoyed something by. So it's biographies about them. It is some letter collections, some diaries like the Sylvia Plath books. They're all collected. And then in the shelf below, I think it's all biographies in various ways, and it's all biographies of creative people. Underneath that, we have some Swedish books. So they are all my Swedish hardcovers, I think, for the most part. And most of these I have not read. Then we have my crafting area. So I have all of my books related to craft, sewing, knitting, etc. And then just the continuation of the Swedish books and the Lord of the Rings special editions that I've not been able to fit anywhere else. Then we move on to my first fiction shelf. So starting off, the above shelves are all books that I've read. From this shelf with the Ducks Newbery Report, that is where the read books end and the unread books start. In terms of fiction, and my fiction is all mixed up because I didn't really figure out how to organize it in any more particular way. It just continues on, with the exception of the shelf here that is my favorites shelf. So this is not in any particular genre, it's just a collection of some of my favorite authors and all of their books, with the exception of it sort of ends at Waterfalls of Stars. After that, it's just books that didn't fit anywhere else, but they are fiction. So Ali Smith's Spring, for example, I haven't read yet, but I plan to soon. And then the unread fiction continues on for that last shelf as well. Then we move on to the nonfiction. So this first shelf is mostly photography or nature related. Honestly, the books are a bit of a muddle, but with read and unread, I'm realizing now. But if you're at all curious about a book that you would like to buddy read with me and you're unsure, definitely look in the store graph. Then we start off with my memoirs, and this is definitely one of the biggest sections. I've thought about organizing the memoirs more specifically, but this is where we're at the moment. It's just a pile of memoirs in various subtopics. And then more continuing on with the memoir theme and some essays as well. Then we have more reference books up on the top shelf here, and we move to some movie and music related books. We have my short story collections, my very small poetry collection, and some journals, diaries. Then we have my Japanese literature section, which is the only one that I mentioned that I've organized my fiction in a particular way, more short stories to the right. And then we have more music books, music nonfiction, and also books on writing, some literary magazines. Then we have some mass market books and just small books that I couldn't fit anywhere else. It's just a mix of genres. This is kind of a history mix of things. So it's some things are about music, some things are like cultural history things, more history and also philosophy, medicine, cultural history, and then nature related, movement, sports, science. Yes. I'm looking at the video as I'm sharing it with you and trying to figure out. So that is the overview of my Physical TBR and my read book, so my entire book collection. As I said, if you see any books that you are interested in reading, and you can always double check to see if I've read it or not, if you're unsure in my store graph, let me know. And I would also really love to know how you organize your books, because I'm still feeling like I could specify in particular my fiction more. I've thought about organizing my classics by themselves, but I feel like that makes me less eager to read the classics. For some reason, if I organize them that way, my mind thinks that classics is those dull, dreary, I don't know, more tedious reading, and I feel like I don't need to I don't need to select them out in that way, because that will not help me in actually getting to those books, because I do enjoy classics, and I feel like when I've organized them by themselves, I end up ignoring that shelf a bit. And I've also thought about organizing by kind of global scope, but I feel like that would not be especially helpful aside from my Japanese shelf, which it's a big part of my collection. So yeah, I would love to hear how you organize your books. What kind of categories do you have? Are you a person who organizes by alphabetical order with the authors' names? I feel like that would not be helpful for me, because I don't always remember the author's last name. So I feel like that would not be especially helpful in finding the books that I'm looking for. So yeah, do let me know and let's have a chat in the comments. I also wanted to pick out my People's April TBR in this video, because as I said, the memoir section is here behind me, and I thought that we would figure it out together. So I'll bring you closer to the shelves and we'll look together for the potentials for People's April. And if you don't know what People's April is, it is a readathon going on in April. I think it's the entirety of the month. It is organized by Roz and also someone else, I don't remember. I will put links to both of them in the description their announcement videos, and they'll talk all about the intentions with the readathon and all of the prompts and various things. But the basic idea of the readathon is to read memoirs, diaries, journals, letter collections, anything like personal writing related. And it's, as many of you know, it is my favorite area when it comes to nonfiction. Memoir is definitely my favorite genre. I also love a good biography, and I really enjoy letter collections and diary collections as well. So I thought that we would get my People's April TBR together, and they're going to be potentials because, as you know, I have a lot of them, as you have already seen in this video. And yeah, so let me bring you closer. So I know for a fact that I want to read queer books. So this is the queer section like I showed you before. And this one I am thinking of potentially reading with someone maybe. So Voice of the Fish is for sure one I will be reading, and I have a buddy in mind for that one. Then let's see. I'm not sure how biographical this is, but this is one I would love to read soonish. Being Ace, an anthology of queer, trans, femme, and disabled stories of asexual love and connection. I'm not sure if this is all nonfiction or if it's fiction stories as well. But that's an option. I'm thinking also, so I've been reading Poor Little Sick Girls lately, and I am very much enjoying reading the chronic illness related books, so this is also an option to continue on with that theme. Ill Feelings by Alice Hattrick. This is one I've been really, really eager to read. This is actually a perfect one because it also talks about other type of personal writing. So I have chosen this one, Ill Feelings by Alice Hattrick. And then, let's see, so we have more memoirs here. And this one I bought late last year because I saw it while I was in London last year. And I knew I had to get it because agoraphobia, I mean, it is a topic that is, it hits close to home, I would say. And so as soon as I saw it, I knew that I needed to buy it, but I couldn't in London because it was a hardcover. As I said, it is definitely one I would like to get to, so I'm adding this one. Then, so you can see here, I don't know if this is in frame actually. Maybe I should just bring you over so I can see what you see. This is very experimental in my video filming. I've never filmed like this. But, so this is, here, Tove Ditlevsen. This is the second and this is the third in her Copenhagen trilogy. And I also have the Swedish translation of the entire trilogy that I would really like to get to, and it's a autofiction book. This one, I recently got this set because the Swedish translation is a fairly recent release in its entirety. And this is autofiction, I'm thinking, because it's sold in Sweden as fiction, autobiographical fiction. So yeah, that fits well with one of those themes that was also mentioned in People's April, the announcement that Roz made. Longing is a good option because I have this one on audio, and I think it's nice to have something on audio because I do listen to quite a lot of audio while I'm eating my lunch at work, or going back and forth, walking around in the week on my commute and stuff. And this one is on nature, and I mean, you know I love my nature writing, so I'm also thinking I want a letter collection or a diary collection to have ongoing. So we have some options here. This one is heavy heavy in subject matter, but I would really like to return to it. I started it last year or the year before. It's Viktor Krempler chronicling the Second World War and sort of the day-by-day experiences of it, and the situation becoming darker and darker. And I feel like it's one of those books that feels very timely but also kind of heavy, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it mentally, to be honest with you. And then we have, this one is Diaries and Letters from Lena Nyman, and I have thought of making this as kind of movie and book project. So maybe. I am quite tempted to read Virginia Woolf's diaries. This is the selected diaries. So I'm thinking maybe I'll do this one because I've been meaning to read Virginia Woolf for such a long time, and I've bought the diaries, the selected letters, and a biography of her, and I also own most of her fiction, so it's really high time I get to this. So this one, the diaries, I'll get, and maybe even do this as a combination of this one, All the Lives We Ever Lived by Catherine Smith, which is a book talking about the author's relationship to Virginia Woolf. Okay, so we're back with this very chaotic video. I'm not sure if this works out in the editing. I'm hoping it will. But I thought that I would show you the books that I selected and more closely and talk about each of them and read a little bit about what they're about. So starting off with the last two books that I selected, we have Selected Diaries by Virginia Woolf, which is edited and collected by someone, and that someone is abridged and edited by Anne Olivier Bell with an introduction by Quentin Bell. So I guess I think they're both relatives of Virginia Woolf, but I could be wrong. I started reading this actually last year around the summer, and I really like Virginia Woolf's diary style, her observations on very mundane or everyday things, and I think it could be a very nice companion to have ongoing in the whole duration of April, and maybe even continue on from then. We'll see, but I think I would love to get to this one, start this one in April. And then I think alongside that would be really nice to read All the Lives We Ever Lived by Catherine Smith, seeking solace in Virginia Woolf. And it says Catherine Smith was a student at Oxford University when she first read Virginia Woolf's modernist masterpiece To the Lighthouse, in the comfort of an English sitting room and in the companionable silence she shared with her father. After his death, she returned to that beloved novel as a way of wrestling with his memory and understanding her own grief. I really like memoirs that deal with grief. I think they have ended up being some of my favorites of the genre. I think they bring something out of the author in both a reflective tone, but also often a generosity and compassion for life. I don't know, but there's something about this topic that brings out something very special in the writer, and yeah, so I think this would be a good match with reading some of Virginia Woolf's own words. And then we have Belonging, Natural Histories of Place, Identity, and Home by Amanda Thompson. This one says, reflecting on family, identity, and nature, Belonging is a personal memoir about what it is to have and make a home. It is a love letter to nature, especially the northern landscapes of Scotland and the Scots pinewood of Abernathy, home to standing dead trees known as nags, which support the overall health of the forest. And as I said, I do have this on audio, so I think it would be a nice one to have while I'm walking back and forth on my commute, and also to have just as a constant companion when I'm knitting and when I'm outside in particular. Also, I always end up being more drawn to nature writing around this time of year when the spring comes around, which I have we have finally some spring weather in Gothenburg, so this seems like the kind of book that would be very suitable for the current weather and time of year. Then we have Tove Ditlevsen's Copenhagen trilogy. I have read the first one, so that will be a reread, which, I mean, one of my goals for this year is to reread more. I have not reread a single book this year, so this would be suitable to achieve that as well. And I have been meaning to get to the second and third part in the trilogy. This is autofiction or memoirs, but this is about Tove Ditlevsen, or the protagonist in question, becoming a writer. So the first part is all about the childhood section of the protagonist's lives, and then the second part she starts to work, and in the third part she becomes the person that she's known for later as a accomplished writer. There's also a Tove Ditlevsen biography that is coming out in May, I think, and would really like to get to that one as well, because it's written by Jens Andersen, who is also the biographer of the Astrid Lindgren biography I read last year that I really loved. So would like to get to that one, but I would like to read through the Copenhagen trilogy before then. Then we have On Agoraphobia by Graham Cavini. And this one says, when Graham Cavini was in his early 20s, he began to suffer from a deep fear of the world outside his window. This intense anxiety was eventually diagnosed as agoraphobia. Graham's quest to understand his illness brought him back to his first love, books. From Harper Lee's Boo Radley to Ford Madox Ford, from Emily Dickinson to Shirley Jackson, the literary world is full of agoraphobics once you go looking for them. This is a topic that interests me very much, so I am curious to see how I get on with this author's take on the topic, but I also like the fact that he is looking for answers in books. Then we have Ill Feelings by Alice Hattrick, and this is about their relationship towards their own body and their mother. In 1995, Alice's mother collapsed with pneumonia. She never fully recovered and was eventually diagnosed with ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome. Then Alice got sick. Their symptoms mirrored their mother's and appeared to have no physical cause. They received the same diagnosis a few years later. And this book is a blend of memoir, medical history, biography, and literary nonfiction to uncover both of their case histories, and branches out in the records of ill health the women have written about in diaries and letters. And some of the people they talk about is Virginia Woolf. So that is very suitable with reading Virginia Woolf's diaries as well. And lastly, we have Voice of the Fish by Lars Horn, a lyric essay. And this is, again, a book that talks about nature. So it says, living in Russia and traveling through Georgia as queer and transmasculine, modeling in baths of dead squid for their mother's photography projects, lying bedbound, unable to speak. In Voice of the Fish, Lars Horn dives into marine history, theology, art, and illness, and questions the presumed uniformity of the body as cultural and scientific object, illuminating ways of seeing and being that resist binaries that fracture, mutate. Horn blends the aquatic, mystical, and physical to reach a place beyond them all. So I feel like there's definitely kind of a theme here with chronic illness, queer writing, queer authors, with solace in writing in books, in literature, and very reflective types of books. So there's that. So I hope you have enjoyed this chaotic state of my TBR update, as well as talking about organization. I would love to hear how you organize your books, and also me selecting out my People's April TBR, all of the things. Are you planning to participate in People's April? Have you chosen your TBR yet? I would love to know what you are planning to read. If you have any recommendations based on the books that I've talked about here that you think I would like, let me know. If you saw any books on my shelves that you would be particularly interested to hear my thoughts, I can always try to prioritize reading those books. Let me know as well. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!